Well, the European Central Bank got the markets talking last week, but Sarah and Nina are here to tell us what's going to happen this week. And Sarah, I guess the big highlight this week, first of all, is going to be the latest GDP figures from the Eurozone, right?
Yeah, it's the first quarter GDP numbers, and it's actually not going to be a bad number. Economists expecting around 0.3, 0.4%, which would confirm that the Eurozone is expanding for 4 straight quarters. So that's the good news. The bad news is that there's still some country divergence. Germany is probably going to be really strong and helped by construction after this was sort of a mild winter. France still struggling a bit in the short term. And then there's Spain and Italy that's actually been picking up quite nicely. So we have Germany, then France, and then Spain and Italy that are sort of like muddling along.
And given this whole debate around the ECB and also watching how the recovery is taking hold in the Eurozone, it's probably also worth mentioning that we do have final inflation figures for the Eurozone as well.
I was going to come on to that. So So I mean, the mix there. I mean, last week it seemed that the ECB was talking about still having to do something, but we'll get those final inflation figures. What are you expecting?
All of that data should come together, and inflation is expected to remain very weak. ECB President Draghi did say that further data ahead, the staff inflation forecasts and other growth forecasts will all be considered whether or, if or not action should be taken next month in June.
But I think like for the exact number, it will probably be a confirmation of the 0.7%, which is largely due to the pickup from Easter.
Yeah.
Okay, still quite a nuanced picture in Europe then.
Yep.
Here in the UK, we're talking a bit more about when the first rate rises are going to come, and we'll have the Bank of England doing its big inflation report this week. What are you looking out for there?
Yeah, it's a very different picture than with the ECB, where we're talking about a possible rate cut. But the inflation report is really important in any indications of what the BOE is looking at. Are we looking at maybe a rate hike this year or next year? But it seems like inflation is still below target. The economy is really strong, but the BOE is still not really indicating any rate hike until in 2015.
And I think it's the first one since the new forward guidance was actually laid out, the new framework for forward guidance. So it might be interesting to see how much of a divergence there is on the MPC as to how much slack there is in the economy and to what degree that exists. So we might see a bit more colour on that in the press conference that follows, and maybe even some commentary on the housing market as well, which people are worried about a bit at the moment.
Yeah, that's going to be a big highlight, isn't it? Also, we get the unemployment figures from the UK this week, and until recently, that's been the big guide for Bank of England policy, hasn't it?
It has, but given the reduced significance and the fact that it's already fallen below 7%, a further tick lower, which is expected, is unlikely to really get markets moving or to change sort of policy outlook in that sense.
What sort of numbers are you looking at?
We're looking at 6.8 for the 3 months.
Okay.
So this is better than the 6.9 we saw before.
Yeah.
Okay. Turning to the corporate front, and we have quite a lot of Italian banks reporting this week. They've been raising a lot of capital. How do you think their first quarter results are going to look?
Well, net interest income is expected to show some improvement given lower funding costs, lower sovereign spreads as well, for instance. And some banks are actually focusing away from lending a bit and more into their asset management businesses, which should maybe provide some support in that respect. Also, pending capital increases should hopefully allay some concerns over capital buffers. But still, any commentary or development on risk-weighted assets will be closely watched for as well. Any commentary on restructuring, shedding of non-performing loans, for instance, and the outlook for 2014 is, of course, key with the upcoming stress tests and the asset quality review.
Exactly. Big review that the ECB is doing of European banks.
Exactly.
Thanks very much, guys. We'll look out for all of that.